In this chapter, we will be addressing 6 key issues. First, choosing the right relationship. Second, partnerships in the supply chain. Third, supply base realization. Fourth, supplier network. Fifth, supplier development. And sixth, implementing partnerships. But let's talk about the first 3. First of it is choosing the right relationship. Which relationship is appropriate in different circumstances, bottleneck items, strategic items, non-critical items, and leverage items. We will be answering 2 key issues here. First, what types of supply relationships can be adapted? Second, how can each type of relationship be tailored to different types of product? There are many possible types of relationship in supply chain. A development of Sacco's view mentioned that the different options can be viewed in the form of a continuum. This can range from arm's length, where the relationship is conducted through the marketplace with price as its foundation, to vertical integration, where the relationship is cemented through ownership. Vertical integration can extend for one or more tiers, and its direction may be upstream, downstream, or both. A continuum of relationship options is shown in Figure 9.1. Each of these relationship styles has motivating factors that drive development and which govern the operating environment. The duration, breadth, strength, and closeness of the relationship vary from case to case and over time. A focal firm may not have the same type of relationship with all of its customers and suppliers. The firm may adopt a range of styles. Choosing which type of relationship to adopt in a given supply chain situation is an important strategic issue. For example, grocery retailers often adopt an arm's length style for own brand goods like kitchen, paper, and use online auctions according to Smart and Harrison 2003 to obtain lowest priced solutions. Companies tend to deal with a large number of suppliers, even after the supply base has been rationalized. Treating them all in the same way fails to recognize that some have different needs to others. Differentiating the role of suppliers and applying appropriate practices towards them allows a focal firm to target purchasing and supply chain management resources to better effect. A number of approaches seek to segment suppliers into categories. The purchase portfolio matrix presented in Figure 9.2 is based on the notion that the customer will seek to maximize purchasing power when it can. This approach assumes that the key factors that affect the relationship are the strength of the buying company in the buyer-supplier relationship and the number of suppliers able and willing to supply a product in short term. Purchase portfolio matrix. First, we have strategic items, those for which a buyer has strength but there are few available suppliers. In this situation, purchasing should use its strength carefully to draw suppliers into a relationship that ensures supply in the long term. Second is the bottleneck items, where the buyer has little power and there are few alternatives. The aim of purchasing in this situation is to reduce dependence on these items through diversification to find additional suppliers, seek substitute products, and work with design teams to ensure that the bottleneck items are avoided and new products where possible. Third, we have non-critical items. With a good choice of suppliers, possibly through following a strategy of using standardized parts, the traditional buying mechanism of competitive tendering is most valid for non-critical items. Such items are the ones with the following characteristics. First, not jointly developed. Second, unbranded. Third, do not affect performance and safety in particular. Fourth, have required low investment in specific tools and equipment. Fourth is we have leverage items, where there are large number of available suppliers and the buyer has high spending power, then the buyer will be able to exercise this power to reduce prices and to push for preferential treatment. This approach is heavily weighted towards the buyer's viewpoint. It is also a little unfashionable because it uses the term power in supplier relationships and assumes that traditional market-based negotiations will be used for some product groups. However, it applies to many firms today and reflects the though approach taken by purchasing teams or some of their customers.
Partnerships in the supply chain. So far, we have used the term partners in a supply chain to apply to all firms who are involved in a given network. Here, we review the added value that partnerships may bring. Before we proceed, let us first know what is partnering. Partnering is an attempt to build close, long-term links between organizations in a supply chain that remain distinct but which choose to work closely together. Did you know that partnerships improve supply chain? By working closely together, companies and their suppliers can create highly competitive supply chains. Failing to collaborate results in distortion of information as it moves through a supply chain, which in turn can lead to costly inefficiencies. Generally, cooperative relationships or partnerships have been characterized as being based upon: first, the sharing of information. Through the more open and frequent and accurate exchange of information, typical of a long-term supply chain partnership, companies can eliminate many problems and ensure ongoing improvement. Perhaps it is the key characteristics which includes demand and supply information. The free exchange of information such as sharing cost and demand data and coordinated decision-making reduce the inefficiencies inherent in less collaborative relationships. Mutual trust is crucial to reassuring firms that information shared with a partner will not be used against them. Second, trust and openness. It is the quality that allows cooperation and coordination to take place both within the organization and across the supply chain partners. Remember, trust is essential to the free and open flow of information needed to respond to the customer needs at each point of interaction. Third, coordination and planning. Coordination with your partners is important to oversee the operations of a supply chain in a company or organization. It is essential for purchasing, inventory, warehousing, and transportation activity. Fourth, mutual benefit and sharing of risk. An in-depth knowledge of both the industry and the suppliers in it is critical to making the right sourcing decisions and to eliminate unnecessary risk. Fifth, a recognition of mutual interdependence. Consider the potential response or actions of other firms in the industry when making a decision or considering a strategy. 6. Shared goals. It is necessary that your partners have the same goal with your business in order to avoid problems along the way. 7. Compatibility of corporate philosophies. It is important that your corporate philosophy is compatible with your partners in the supply chain because it provides practical benefits at every level of your business. Now let's proceed to economic justification for partnerships. Entering into a partnership with a company, to whatever extent, implies a transition away from the rules of the open marketplace and towards alternatives. These different structures must demonstrate benefits, otherwise they will not deliver competitive advantage. Open market relationships are typified by short-term contracts, arm's length relations, little joint development, and many suppliers per part. Observing that Japanese practice and consequently the lean model of supply differs significantly from this indicates that other non-market mechanisms must be operating. The Japanese tend to infuse their transactions with the non-economic qualities of commitment and trust. These characteristics are important in successful partnerships. While this may increase transaction cost and risk, it appears that the non-economic qualities help to secure other economic and strategic advantages that are difficult to achieve through the open market system. And finally, we will now discuss the advantages and disadvantages of partnerships. Within partnerships, savings come in the form of reduced negotiations and drawing up of separate contracts, reduced monitoring of supplier soundness, including supply quality, and increased productivity. These are accompanied by strategic advantages of shortened lead times and product cycles, and conditions amenable to longer-term investment. These advantages, however, need to be set against the problems that can be associated with the introduction of commitment and trust. But, along with the advantages, it is also paired up with disadvantages. Examples of potential disadvantages of partnerships include the following. First, the inability to price accurately qualitative matters such as design work. Second, the need for organizations to gather substantial information about potential partners on which to base decisions. Third, the risk of divulging sensitive information to competitors. Fourth, potential opportunism by suppliers. In the long term, additional factors occur when companies enter into partnerships. With the outsourcing of the R&D of components and subsystems, buyers benefit from the decreased investment they have to make. Working with suppliers who fund their own R&D leads to their earlier involvement in new product development, where buyers benefit from suppliers' ability to cut costs and develop better performing products. This scenario leads to greater buyer risk owing to dependence on a smaller number of suppliers for designs, and also the potential for opportunism through the smaller number of other companies able to compete with the incumbent suppliers for their work.
Supply-based rationalization. Rationalization of the supply base is a procurement performance driver. The goal of rationalization is to reduce purchases from poor suppliers and focus on desirable suppliers. The primary goal of supply-based rationalization is to create lower risk and more manageable supply base and develop strong business relationships with critical suppliers to meet the company's requirements for goods and services. Supplier rationalization processes. Rationalization forces organizations to categorize their spend and identify critical suppliers for each category. Organizations rationalize the supply base by reducing the number of suppliers and prioritizing preferred suppliers. Building closer relationships with top-tier suppliers helps reduce waste in supply chain. Many organizations reduce their supply base in order to leverage buys, reduce costs, and free up buyers' time for more strategic functions. By reducing the supplier base, fewer employees are needed to maintain day-to-day purchasing activities. The quality of supplier is more important than the quantity of suppliers. Poor performers can then be replaced with better ones to drive supply performance. What are the drivers for reducing the numbers of direct suppliers? Integrating a supply chain means that a focal firm process align with those of its upstream and downstream partners. it becomes impractical to integrate processes of the focal firm with the processes of a substantial involved network of suppliers. Instead, high-intensity relationships can be managed with a limited supplier base. Such considerations argue for the appointment of a limited number of lead suppliers, each responsible for managing their portion of the inbound supply chain. The emphasis on supplier management is on the suitable set of suppliers. Generally, companies are seeking to reduce the numbers of suppliers they are with by focusing on those with the right set of capabilities. Next is lead supplier. Over the past 10 years, many large companies have consolidated their supplier base. In some cases, this has seen the number of suppliers reduced from around 1,200 or so. However, many of the original suppliers still contribute to the owners' products, but from lower tiers.